Diving into the news stories that Kiwis were fascinated by this week, the ones that we went Googling for more information about. But there's a very different element to today's show. For the first time ever, you can watch the show and be a part of it live as it happens. It's very exciting. And of course, helping make all this happen, producer Josh Beatty joins me again today.
And I love the live element of the show. I mean, always the show is live, but now live on Facebook and on YouTube. So if you are watching, hello to you. And don't forget, of course, you can comment during the show. We'd love to hear your thoughts, but also if you are listening, you can still get in touch as well, 8168 with the keyword REMA.
Yeah, so the places you can watch the show right now live as it happens are on the YouTube and on the Facebook for REMA, okay? So if you head along to YouTube itself, just search for New Zealand's REMA and you'll find the stream happening there. Otherwise, of course, easiest way to probably find our Facebook stream would be to head to rema.co.nz. Click through on the Facebook button there. That will lead you through to the New Zealand REMA page. And so with all that in mind, here we are together again, taking a look at the news stories that have been happening over the course of this week. And we look forward to getting your comments as we progress through the week that was and find out what stories Kiwis really went looking for more information about.
Trending with Andrew Curtis.
So, shall we start off with King Charles? And King Charles, of course, has been out of the public eye for a wee while, but he was the number 3 news story in the country on Friday. That was the 26th of April, 2024. Resuming public duties, and we've even been given an update on his health. And to bring us some more information about this one, first we turn to One News. They provided this update on what King Charles has been up to. Taking a quick pause from this one, did you know that the Majesties was a thing that you could be?
Well, I suppose if you're a monarch, you are your majesty.
Yeah, but the Majesties, like I feel like this is the pretense for some kind of royal family-based sitcom that I never knew I needed.
I was about to say, it does sound like
Wacky Times in the Palace with the Majesties. Anyway, let's see what else this story has to share about how the people of the UK felt about the re-emergence of their monarch. Yes, seeing is believing when it comes to the royal family. I didn't actually believe in the royal family. There are people who did believe, but it wasn't until I saw them that I really thought, wow, these could be real people.
Well, he does look in quite good health if you're viewing the video with us online at the moment. He certainly does seem like the King Charles that we know and love, which is maybe a little bit surprising.
Yeah, also a interesting observation too about the need for the royal family to be seen and to be heard. They seem on the one hand to be very aware of their need to be, have a front-facing PR image, but at the same time there's been other stories lately regarding the royal family that have really made me question if they understand this stuff very well at all. But let's continue with the story this afternoon. Well, that's enough from them this afternoon. Let's continue then with our look at this particular story. And the thing I'm curious to hear from those of you who are viewing along with us today, you can also, of course, text through 8168 with the first word REMA. But when we look at this story, one of the things that stands out is the wording regarding his duties, the king's duties these days. And at the risk of really putting my foot in it with some who might be listening today, it does raise the question of how necessary the monarchy still is. And we'd love to poll you guys this afternoon who are part of the show. Again, either watching online right now via the Rima Facebook page or on our Rima YouTube channel. Or, of course, if you just want to text through today. But the relevance of the royal family, how far away could we be from being a republic?
Well, if you have an opinion, do get in touch, 8168 with the keyword Rima, or as Andrew said, if you're streaming with us, then you can comment there. I believe we would have a divided opinion if we poll our audience, and if everybody was to come through with their opinion, I think it'd be split fairly 50-50 if I was having to make an estimation.
Yeah, it's an interesting question though, isn't it? I mean, when we consider again what the work, the public duties are of the monarch,
Yeah, I mean,
they're very similar to a PR agency, aren't they? As opposed to anything particularly relevant in the governance of the country.
well, if you're talking about PR situations, they didn't handle the first illness of a monarch well. So
Right, which is, the part two of this, and it was interesting to see them touching on this a little bit within
Yes.
this one news article we shared with everybody this afternoon. But very different approaches made, and of course, I would say one of the side effects of that being the King Charles story has been treated relatively matter-of-factly, whereas the Princess Kate story spiraled into the absurd remarkably quickly.
Oh, and we saw the backlash of that. In fact, in a previous episode of Trending, it was one of the most trending stories of the week, just like this one is here,
Sure.
because of all of the people who had to backpedal and apologize for just what had happened.
Yeah, they'd speculated a little too strongly, shall we say, uncharitably. Uncharitable speculation in the age of the internet. Who would have thought? What a concept. And in the midst of all this as well, there is somebody that I know he would not place himself at the center of the story, but I was curious as I considered this. Wonder how Will is feeling in the midst of all this. I
my
mean, this
goodness.
is his father and his wife at the same time.
Gosh, I hadn't even considered that. I mean, it is certainly a point for prayer, I would say, as well, in that regard.
Sure. But of course, he's also somebody who the health of Charles affects him, obviously, as son of monarch, quite directly. But the fact that he could end up becoming king relatively swiftly compared to, say, the amount of time that Charles spent waiting in the wings, shall we say. I wonder if that is the feeling that they have. I mean, it's the kind of interview question you'd never get an answer to. But when you are the one who is in waiting,
Yes.
on the one hand, this is what your whole life has been working towards. When you are the heir, then all of your existence has been geared towards preparing you for this moment. But at the same time, in order for it to happen, your parent must pass away. So what a weird paradox to be experiencing every single day. Anyway, that was the news story. That was the number 2 story, in fact, number 3 story rather, in the country, looking back on Friday. So guys, why don't we continue in this show where we take a look at the news stories that most Kiwis were looking for more information about over the course of the last week.
Live on air and online. Trending with Andrew Curtis.
And a welcome once again to everybody who has joined us online, viewing the show live. Again, this is so exciting for us. We've wanted to have a show where not only could you listen, but you could view and you could chat, be a part of what's going on during the show today. So once again, a couple of ways for you to get involved with us online by streaming the show today.
That's right. So if you're streaming either via Facebook or via YouTube, you can very simply just comment at any point if you've got an opinion on the stories that we are sharing, or of course the traditional way, which is 8168 with the keyword Rima.
Now, we're moving ahead then with our stories all the way back on Friday. The number 3 story, King Charles. The number 4 story, though, a name that a lot less people will have any sympathy for, and that was Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, certainly, kind of strange to see this return to the headlines, but for a very particular reason, because we thought that saga had concluded, but apparently not.
No, there was an ongoing news story, an ongoing court case, in fact, happening in New York City. And so this update comes to us via stuff.co.nz.
more difficult to convict those who victimize women and who prey on them. And because it will be more difficult to convict, I can foresee that there may be fewer criminal prosecutions.
Weinstein is not a free man. Last year, he was sentenced in Los Angeles to 16 years in prison for charges of rape and sexual assault. He's also appealing that decision. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
So again, that story update, that was number 4, by the way, Harvey Weinstein, his name, number 4, the search term in this country, and a very uncomfortable conversation that continues to occur over this trial and its ongoing ramifications. I suppose for many too, that question of the place of justice in our modern culture, and even thinking back to the beginnings of the Me Too movement. I mean, this was in some ways the trial that kicked off the wider reflection on sexual assault and how we tolerate the behavior of people in powerful positions abusing those who are dependent on them.
But why do you think, Andrew, that so many people were searching for more information on this story? Because it seems rather like we've had the saga and then we've also had an addition, but it seems fairly clear what new information would we really need from this?
Well, I think there's something about the name that is just quite compelling. I mean, Harvey is very much the I was going to say the boogeyman, but I was going to say the apex predator. These are the terms that go through my mind when I think about this guy. But I feel like it's probably the most apt in this case. He's the one that people think of when it comes to the Me Too movement and then how these things are treated in the courts. I think what we're seeing with this, and I tread carefully here, I think you'd understand why, but is the challenge of having people brought to justice, but then also justice being seen to be done. And there are certain things about the legal process that need to be observed. What we're dealing with is a situation where, I mean, I've made a note to myself here. And again, by the way, would love to hear your thoughts on this. If you're viewing or if you are listening along, you can text 8168 with the first word REMA, or go to the YouTube or Facebook pages where you can watch the show and also chat to let us know your thoughts on these topics. But I've written down 2 things can be true at once. And that can be this. Number 1, Harvey Weinstein can be guilty of terrible crimes.
Yeah.
And he can also be accused of crimes he didn't commit.
Right.
Both of those things can be true. Now, that's true for all of us, and I say this because one of the things about the legal system for it to maintain its integrity is things like, innocent until proven guilty. And when we see a case like this, there is a very visceral instinct in all of us that says, well, but it's so obvious. It's so obvious that this person is guilty. We don't need it in this case. We'll just set that aside here. And pursue justice that we feel is quite warranted. Now, of course, the problem is we all have to exist within a system where the legal process endures, and we can't afford to do something like that. And what can happen as a result, as we have seen with this Harvey Weinstein story, is that terrible people can sometimes be exonerated by the very same system that convicts them for something else.
It's certainly a tough one to see, and it's certainly one of these instances as well where we look at a trial not so much by the courts, but by media as well.
Absolutely. And so that was your number 4 news story, in fact, in the country on Friday. Now, very soon we're going to have a special guest join us in studio. So if you're watching, you're going to see my producer disappear out the door as I seek to bring this person in to join me. Because we like to like to cover stories that are in the Google rankings in New Zealand, but also too seeing what's popular within the various news sites around the country as well. And of course, there are many that you can choose from. You could have a look at stuff.co.nz. You could have a look at the New Zealand Herald. You could look at the NBR. You could look at News Talk ZB, whatever it might be. But in this particular case, we decided to take a look at a New Zealand news service that at the same time has a bit of a pop culture edge to it. And this would be the Spin-Off. Now, the Spin-Off is, yes, a news site, but also pretty well known to have a fairly lefty-leaning perspective on the world. And they put up an article actually this week that was ranked number 2 on their own website as people tried to make sense of it. And the title of this article was Dreaming of My Not Wedding Day. Dreaming of my not wedding day. And in other words, how do we approach lifelong commitment and marriage when we don't believe in lifelong commitment and in marriage. And we thought about having a chat on this topic between Josh and myself today. The problem is that when it comes to lifelong commitments, how many years are you into your marriage journey now, Josh?
Well, not 0, but I haven't reached a year yet.
And I'm still about 4 years my own self. So all to say, we thought we would bring in somebody who, well, not only is she, I was going to say mother to a bunch of monkeys around here, because let's be honest. Alison Shaw, you've been part of the Rema Media team now for, is it a couple of years now?
Yeah, a couple of years, yep.
A couple of years. And should I say, probably more significantly, really, also able to testify to having a long-lived marriage.
Come on.
Something that I think we need to celebrate these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I just thought it could be fun to have a chat with you as our special guest on this one, because when I saw this, it really stood out to me as a real... Well, it kind of breaks your heart, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. I'll read this opening line for you, and I'd just love to know your thoughts on this one. We should say for people too, how long have you and Peter been married now?
We have been married 44 years.
44 years. Exactly.
Married in 1980. I was 21, he's 24.
Wow.
He's my best friend.
I was born in 1981.
Oh, okay.
Gives you a bit of perspective on that one.
No be your mum.
Well, you kind of are. No comment. Kind of my work mum anyway, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. So listen to this line here. It says, what does a forever relationship look like when you don't believe in marriage, and how do you celebrate it? I mean, what strikes you when you look at a sentence like that, as a mum, but also as somebody who's been married for a number of years now too? Yeah,
I think the tide has turned, and that we're not good at developing long-term relationships, because we've become very self-focused. Do you make me happy? Do you give me pleasure? Do you, and if you don't, therefore I'm not, I'll move on.
Yeah.
And I just think that's never going to work in a long-term relationship, you know?
And were you aware of this? I mean, I know I'm getting you to cast your mind back a number of years on this one too, but in terms of attitudes towards relationships and the perspective of, if you are dating somebody, the intent is to marry.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was very much the default, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you didn't so much play the field.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean... Yeah, you're young, but yeah, the idea was that I'm engaged to you, I'm going to marry you, and we're going to be married for life.
Yeah, exactly.
It's our commitment.
Yeah. Well, look, listen to this, because as this article goes on, the author starts to try and answer their own question about what a forever relationship looks like when you don't believe in marriage. And so, how's this? A direct quote. But I'd love to get your thoughts on it. It says, I wonder if I say somewhere in the world there are extremely rationalist weddings happening, with partners wearing practical clothing and vowing, I promise that I love you in this precise moment, and I will reevaluate that love constantly based on your behaviour towards me.
Oh, it's so sad, eh? It's so sad that someone would even pen those words, Like, to me, they're exposing their lack of integrity, their lack of trust and respect. Like a marriage is built on respect, on love, on kindness, on integrity. I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to walk out. Kids need that security.
Yeah.
Kids growing up in a stable, loving home, are going to be set up for life.
Yeah.
So I don't get that at all.
It is kind of, and this idea too, I'll reevaluate that love constantly based on your behaviour towards me.
Yeah.
Do you think, though, that it's a repurposing of why marriage exists? Because I think for Alison's point of view, and maybe for our point of view here, the idea is that it exists for the creation of family and for stability.
Yep.
Whereas here, as you also talk about, Alison, in a more individualist culture, it is this relationship serving me?
Exactly.
And so therefore the purpose change fits the shift to, well, as long as it's good and going great, we're in it. And as soon as it's not, no worries.
But I think deep down everybody wants a meaningful relationship. Everybody, like the fallout after a breakup is horrible. Everybody's looking for a meaningful relationship. So this kind of, it seems ridiculous to me.
Well, what I thought was interesting too was that they're describing themselves as extremely rationalist. I've thought about this. I understand this. I know what's really going on. Whereas if I was to borrow a phrase from the modern vernacular, it sounds like a lot of cope. And when I say cope, everybody, what I mean is the kind of thing you tell yourself to try and convince yourself you're happy about this current situation. But I mean, I love that thought that you just shared there. I think everyone is looking for this kind of relationship. I'll read you something else from this article that stood out here. And she's talking about a conversation that she was having with her partner. And they're talking about this kind of rationalist marriage thing that they might try and have. And the guy says, I do want something with you, a way to celebrate and honour us. But I'd rather celebrate our 5 years and what we've built together than promise each other a future that we can't see. She says, my heart is trying to stay broken, my bottom lip trying to keep itself pouted, but I know he's right. A wedding captures a moment in time. It doesn't accurately signal what's to come. I don't believe in it either. To make a promise now about how we'll feel about each other forever, because I've said those words, not at a wedding, but I've told ex-partners I will always love them, that I will fight for them, that I'll stay with them through everything. And at the time, I meant it every time. And now I can barely remember their surnames. I have to squint in pictures to remember what their face looks like.
Gosh, yeah, it's so sad. I find it really sad.
Isn't it tragic?
Yeah, it's tragic. You know, I think that we've lost sight that a relationship needs work, you know, like for Peter and I, it hasn't all been plain sailing, but there's a commitment to work through it. And you become a better person, you become a bigger person, you become, you're working through issues, and those translate into other relationships. But yeah, we had this thing that, you know, we'll always resolve our differences. We're committed to this, you know, and so therefore it's give and take. It's like understanding where the other person's coming from. I guess it's maturity. Andrew, it's just maturity.
Well, yeah. And I wonder how many of these people too are byproducts of maybe not having that example in their own life as well.
Yeah,
you know. Maybe last thing I would ask you then on this topic, and again, by the way, everyone, this was a number 2 news story on the Spin-Off website, which says to me there's a lot of curiosity, a lot of questions about this, and people trying to reconcile what modern relationships look like. But I don't know how easily you can do this, Alison. But what could you say if I was to ask you, what is marriage for?
Okay.
How would you answer that?
I think I'd come back to 2 is better than 1. Friendship is really big for us. We're best friends. Like, we love travel, we love doing stuff together. So friendship is really important, and I think common goals, common direction, but also more than that, it's about family. It's about, like you said, Josh, it's about having kids and grandkids and that whole rich experience of extended family, you know. And it is rich. It's really rich, yeah.
Well, and we're richer for having you join us today too, Alison. Thanks for coming in and being part of Trending today.
Thank you.
Trending with Andrew Curtis.
And remember too, at any time you're welcome to join our conversation. Maybe there was something that Alison said that resonated with you today. You can always chime in either on the stream, the live stream, where you can be watching the show as well, or just by texting in the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, 8168, start the message with the keyword Rima. I would love to hear what you have to say and share it with Andrew. So 8168, keyword Rima, flick us a text.
And so now we're going to continue on looking at the news stories from the week that was. And again, these are determined by the Google rankings or even the page rankings for our news providers. As I mentioned, the last story, number 2 on the Spin-Off website, this question of what marriage looks like in 2024. But let's head back to the Google searches in New Zealand. And on Saturday, the 27th of April, there was a name that, it might ring a bell if you've followed New Zealand pop culture for a wee while. But Josh, True Bliss, does it ring any bells for you?
Yeah, you're before my time, I would imagine, because...
I would imagine. How dare you?
Well, I know a little bit having prepped for the show, but other than that, this was the first time I'd encountered True Bliss or any of this pop sensation time before the internet, really.
Time before the internet. Once again, that's strike 2 in the space of the last 30 seconds, buddy. So take a look at yourself. No, True Bliss was number 9 in the country, and I think it was partly due to something that was run on One News this week, looking back at the pop stars phenomenon. And if you missed this story entirely and want to recap, or are wondering what on earth we are talking about, take a look at this story that did air on One News over the last week, and it was probably what propelled the story to number 9 in the country, the number 9 search term in New Zealand on Saturday, the 27th of April.
Paris, Munich, everybody talk about pop music. Before America had an idol, before Britain got talent, New Zealand found pop stars.
Are you a young woman between 18 and 26? Do you have what it takes to front an all-girl pop group?
We did not really realise how huge it was going to be.
And where did you come from today?
I'm from Dunedin.
From Cromwell originally.
I'm currently a student. I'm Sagittarius.
Russian?
Yeah! We weren't putting on airs or, trying to create something that wasn't genuine in ourselves.
Thank you.
The whole experience was a roller coaster.
We're not going to be Spice Girls? No!
There were absolute incredible fun memories.
On TV for 9 weeks, New Zealand watched as 550 hopefuls became 5.
You've made it into the group.
Made it into the group. What? Are you lying?
No.
With every move and mood captured by the cameras,
I feel you getting closer.
the girls focused on creating an album.
It must evoke a lot of stuff, though, seeing it back.
We've all recently watched it because it's gone onto YouTube, and all I thought was, oh, I was a pain in the butt.
The TV format, familiar now, but it wasn't all plain sailing.
It was so raw, and I see a really young, insecure, easily intimidated woman trying to make headway.
I think when you watch back and see us like that, there's sort of like a protective thing, like me looking at myself and these girls being like, oh, I would not let those girls stand for that now.
The instant stardom had other drawbacks too.
Some experts are sitting back saying, well, we can't wait to see the demise and the flop of this.
If you love me, baby, you deny it.
After the show, True Bliss hit the road with a #1 hit at their backs. Their 1999 tour, a sellout. And New Zealand still carries a lot of love for these pioneers of pop telly.
I think, or that it was embarrassing to like True Bliss. So then to come back now and find that actually you can have a conversation with a grown-up human being who's like, oh my God, I love True Bliss. True Bliss, Art Green. I did a show with Art Green, and Art Green, he was like, my first ever concert was True Bliss at the Auckland Town Hall. And the fact that he admitted that without any shame in his game is that makes me feel happy.
The thing that I would take from talking to you is the thing that you've taken most from the show is each other.
Our bond is so deep and so strong because we had to.
Don't you start, because then we all start.
You know what I mean?
I know.
We sometimes had to support each other and really go through that on our own as a collective with an industry against us.
I need your love tonight. Don't turn your back on my heart.
They actually picked a vocal collective that would work really beautifully. You know, it was Joe and I initially, it was like something's missing. Kerry arrives, oh yeah, there's a bit of it. Megan got there, boom.
A quarter of a century on, chemistry, harmony, True Bliss.
Turn your back on my heart. Don't turn your back on my heart.
It's, you know.
It's, you know. It's, you know, everybody. That's all you can really say about something like that. So, Josh, now do you realise the scope of what you missed out on? Not being a part of the True Bliss era of New Zealand television?
I don't feel my life is lacking for not having had True Bliss in it.
You see, this is why I feel that maybe we need to do this again for the sake of the new generation, for those who missed out on this whole phenomena. Or maybe have we learned our lesson about maybe not throwing people into this pop culture cauldron?
Well, we do this again already. We have American Idol, X Factor.
Oh, right. Yeah,
what is
true.
it? What's the one with the chairs that
But we
spin?
haven't done it in New
The Voice?
Zealand, though.
Right.
Or have we? Wait a minute. Did we do... What was the most recent one we did in New Zealand? We used to do the one with the 3 X's on the stage.
That
Which
was
one's
New
that?
Zealand's Got Talent, I'm pretty sure.
That's right. But it's not the same as like this kind of behind-the-scenes manufacturing a pop group thing.
That's true, but Stan Walker, one of our most beloved artists these days, was discovered on X Factor.
Australia, though.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So
maybe.
I don't know. Look, we're always welcome to hear your thoughts or look forward to hearing your thoughts as well. If you're watching us online, and by the way, welcome to this momentous moment. I think this is the first ever live streamed program, like devoted to live stream, that we've ever done within the Rima Media family. So big moment for us. And if it's not, I'm saying that it is until proven otherwise. So you can head along to the YouTube page for Rima if you want to watch us there. Or, of course, if you head to our Facebook page, go to rima.co.nz and there's a Facebook button you can click through to, and it'll give you a chance to watch the show, be a part of it, and, of course, send your messages through. And we'd love to have your thoughts. And if we did do Pop Stars in New Zealand again, would you watch it? Sound like a good idea, or are there better things to do with our time?
Trending with Andrew Curtis.
Marching on through with our news stories from the week that was, and something where we don't have too much to talk about on this front, but I am fascinated by what motivated Israel Adesanya, the UFC star, to invest in Broke Boy Taco. Now, this was your number 7 search term in the country on Sunday, April the 28th. So I imagine news of this new outlet managed to start circulating. And Broke Boy Taco, Josh.
Yeah, so it's a Mexican restaurant or food chain, shall we say,
Yep.
because I think it's more food truck than it is restaurant. Is that correct?
I think they're looking to just expand in general. So,
Right.
yeah, maybe there'll be those as well.
But Israel Adesanya, a very well-known UFC fighter, also Kiwi, has connected in with the company. And, well, hopefully you're going to utilize that to bring a bit more revenue in.
All right. Look, let's have the conversation we really need to have about this one. What is with Mexican takeaway places being pretty average? I'm going to throw that. Look, if you agree with us right now, you can join us in the chat. As I said, go to the YouTube or go to the Facebook page. You can send your chats through that way, or text us 8168 with the first word Rima. But there was enough interest in this for it to be the number 7 news story in the country back on Sunday. So there's clearly enough interest in this that Kiwis wanted to find out more. But is it more than morbid curiosity, or are we all desperately hoping that one day a decent Mexican takeaway place will emerge from somewhere around this country?
Because we have Taco Bell now.
Yeah.
I wasn't suggesting.
Have you Taco Belled?
I have Taco Belled.
Right, because I saw one of the signs the other day. I walked past it, and it just entrenched my commitment to not eating at Taco Bell.
Look, it's not great.
Yeah.
It's not.
This is what I thought.
It's not Mexican food. It's American Mexican food.
It's Tex-Mex, isn't it?
It's Tex-Mex.
Tex-Mex,
yeah.
right? Yeah. Because
we have Mexicali.
Yeah, Mexicali. I will say this. I used to love Mexicali. I feel like the wheels have fallen off at Mexicali. So if you disagree, Mexicali people, you're welcome to try and get me back on board. But something about that just wasn't quite at the same level. Maybe it was the difference between the K Road one versus the the Constellation Drive one. That's right. I'm naming and shaming stores right now. I'm just saying the experience on different tiers. So Broke Boy Taco, though, apparently there's a taco recipe that is spectacular. And so this is one of the things that motivated Adesanya to get involved. And in fact, he's been quoted as saying, "I'm just here to help. I'm not trying to take over or anything like that. I'd rather be a silent partner." And so I guess he sees enough potential in Mexican takeaway in New Zealand.
Yeah, well, we do love a new fast food place, don't we? Like, we go bonkers when something new arrives and we can sample some sort of new food.
Well, this is very true, and actually leads into the next story that we want to take a look at today.
Trending with Andrew Curtis.
Because if we look at Monday, the 29th of April, 2024, Popeyes was number 1 in the country. Popeyes chicken. And now this is a story that's been in the mix for a little while, and queues around the block, in fact, to try and take in this new chicken experience. And I have a very, very special guest, in fact, joining us on the show shortly to talk more about it. But before we hear from them, let's hear what people had to say that queued up to try New Zealand's first Popeyes chicken restaurant.
It's worth it. It's going to be the new finger licking chicken good. KFC's out the go.
Have you ever tried it before?
I want to try the burger, but we might go big and extravagant today. Go home. Go big, go home.
It is amazing. It is so good.
It's so juicy.
It's very good. Honestly, I don't even know what I ordered. I'm just happy I got it. They're worth the wait.
It's been absolutely overwhelming today. We're so stoked with the turnout. New Zealand's been asking for Popeyes and they've turned out. We've camped overnight. Our lines are down around the corner. It's the team is doing an amazing job, but we're so stoked to see so many Kiwis excited. We're going to paint the country orange. We're going to open all over the country as soon as we can. We're really excited to bring this product to the rest of New Zealand, and you'll see a lot of openings coming soon.
So there you have it. Popeyes has come to New Zealand and people were excited about it, but this did not sneak up on me at all. Because there is one person who has been sharing the good word of Popeyes with me for a number of years now that I thought, although it's a little bit self-indulgent, I will take the opportunity to get this person onto the show and share why Popeyes is such a revelation in New Zealand. So joining us for the first time on Trending, ladies and gentlemen, Aki Curtis, my wife, joins us via Zoom this afternoon. Hello, my love.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
So
yeah,
we've been talking about this for
Popeye.
Yeah. Now, how long ago? It would probably be at least a year or two where you started to tell me about this place called Popeyes. Now, where did you first experience it? Because it can't have been in New Zealand.
Well, I first tried Popeye in Singapore because, well, we need options and we can't just have KFC all the time. And Popeye was, well, I first went there because I thought it was a restaurant opened by the company that owns Popeye the Sailor Man.
Oh, what? So like the spinach eating guy who was like,
yeah, the spinach eating guy. So I thought it might be a healthier fast food.
Fair enough. No, that makes sense. Okay.
But the chicken, the iconic chicken is really good. The batter is really crispy without being too oily and just really amazing flavor. Apparently they marinate it for like a lot of hours before they fried it. So it is really, really good. Pretty compatible with KFC, I would say.
I see. Because like one of the things they advertise with this, right, is that it's Louisiana chicken versus like KFC. So again, I'm relying on the memory of your palate here, but people might not realize that our love of fried chicken is one of the things that binds our relationship together. So what would you say? Well, like, what's the difference between like a KFC piece of chicken to say a Popeyes piece of chicken?
Oh my God, the last time I tried this was, I would say 7 or 8 years ago. But from what I remember, the tastes are pretty similar. But I can't just have the same thing every single day, right? When I want to cheat. So we need a variety, guys.
Yeah,
we need variety.
Right. Okay.
But it's really remarkable. The crunch is amazing. The crunch, but I wouldn't queue up for it now. I wouldn't queue 19 hours for a piece of chicken. I would go to KFC and wait for the hype to die down.
Right. So if you were saying I was to suggest a date night where we drive to Takanini from the centre of town for Popeyes, you wouldn't be too thrilled with that idea?
We might have some KFC in the car first.
For a test, a bit of a comparison.
That's a great point. We can have like 2 buckets going at the same time. 1 for 1. You know, we might actually have to do that now, you realise.
Yeah, is Josh coming?
Sure, on your date night. I'd be more than
our
privileged.
date night. We are doing double date night.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Bring Christy. Why did you assume your wife wasn't coming?
So you said,
what is going on? That's a whole other conversation to have. Well, all right. Hey, look, thank you for joining us on the show again. When we realized that Popeyes was coming, I mean, again, you pointed this out to me probably a couple of years ago and told me I had to get ready.
Oh, and you need to try the biscuit and gravy. That is amazing. Biscuit and gravy.
Okay, well, before you go then, why because the biscuit sounds like a very American thing. Like it's a little scone thing, right?
It's like a savory scone, but different. But it's really nice. It's something that we don't have in New Zealand. And if you have been queuing 19 hours for it, why don't just order biscuits and gravy?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, I guess time will tell on this one. The double date between the Curtis and Beatty household. A bucket in each hand. Let's go, baby.
And chicken and gravy. Biscuits
Live
and gravy.
on air and online. Trending with Andrew Curtis.
Continuing to take a look at the news stories from the week that was. That was fun.
That was cute. I'll say that was very cute.
Yeah. The one thing too we are also expanding our palettes around is the Korean chicken, the Korean fried chicken. This is the whole other element too that we might even need a third bucket involved if we're going to do this because of course we'll have the American chicken versus the Korean chicken. And then we can make a really informed choice on the best chicken options in New Zealand.
We are going to get so fat.
Well, it's got to happen somehow, doesn't it? Let's continue then to take a look at some of the other news stories that were happening over the course of the week. These are the ones that Kiwis were most fascinated by. But in fact, I tell a lie. Let's not just leave ourselves bound to New Zealand alone. Let's go internationally now. And I found it fascinating to see that this story was not ranking in New Zealand at all, but it was #1 in the UK.
Ah, yes.
So we're talking about on The Guardian, which of course UK news website, and they also provide a list of their most read news stories over the course of any given week. And so as we continue to work through these stories, this was, again, your number one. And U.S. Secretary of State has made a comment, Anthony Blinken, about urging Hamas to accept the Israeli ceasefire deal. So once again, this was the number one news story on the Guardian website in the UK.
Strongly support Israel in its effort to ensure that what happened on October 7th never happens again. But at the same time, we are determined to do everything we can to bring an end to the terrible human suffering that we're seeing every single day in Gaza among children, women, men, who've been caught in a terrible crossfire of Hamas's making. And so maximizing protection of civilians, maximizing the support that gets to them, this is very much our focus. Now, the quickest way to bring this to an end is to get to a ceasefire and the release of hostages. Hamas has before it a proposal that is extraordinarily generous on the part of Israel. And in this moment, the only thing standing between the people of Gaza and a ceasefire is Hamas. They have to decide, and they have to decide quickly. So we're looking to that, and I'm hopeful that they will make the right decision. We've said clearly, and for some time now, on Rafah, that in the absence of a plan to ensure that civilians will not be harmed, we can't support a major military operation in Rafah, and we have not yet seen a plan that gives us confidence that civilians can be effectively protected.
So there we have it, the comments there from the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, talking about the ceasefire deal that has been offered by Israel. But remarkable again, though, to see that this is not something that has turned up as a popular news story in New Zealand at all, Josh.
Yeah, so a sustained 40-day ceasefire is what was being asked for. But do you have any inclinings as to why, Andrew, again, this wouldn't be something that we are really drawing our own attention to?
Yeah, we do seem to have a very particular media stance on this sort of thing in New Zealand. And, I mean, across the world, it would appear that whether you're with the Israeli right to defend themselves and the actions they've taken, or the plight of the people of Gaza, people do tend to come down on one side or the other. What you tend to notice, I suppose, is that because on first blush, Israel are the stronger militarily of the two, it can look like the big boys beating up on a weaker
guy,
on the little guy. And of course, that's quite the euphemism, because many lives are being lost in the process. However, the wider context being that Hamas being a terrorist organization, I don't think anyone denies that, or if they do, they have quickly eliminated themselves from the list of people who I think can have a rational conversation. So in New Zealand, I think generally speaking, we've seen stronger support for Palestine than for Israel. I know even in my neck of the woods, I live in the centre of Auckland, and a number of demonstrations that have taken place up and down, say, Queen Street or the central parts of town. So I don't know, perhaps there's just not the interest in general about this. People feel like they've made up their minds about it. It's really hard to know. But again, this was not a popular news story in New Zealand at all. This was number one, however, in the UK. So I guess make of that what you will.
Trending with Andrew Curtis.
Let's continue, though, to take a look at the other news stories that were trending throughout the country. And this is via, of course, search sites like Google and the names that people were going to try and find more information about. And with a few moments we have remaining as well, every now and then, too, a story comes along that reminds us how fortunate we are to live in New Zealand, and that even at our worst, our news stories pale in comparison to the ridiculousness of what happens overseas.
Oh, yes.
So for this one, we're going back to Saturday, the 27th of April, 2024, and a name that I had never heard of before, Kristi Noem. Kristi Noem found herself at number 5 in New Zealand for search terms around the country, and the reason why is a bit of a shocker.
South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem released a new book. The Guardian got its hands on a copy, and the outlet is flagging a section in which she describes killing her dog named Cricket.
So the easy way to explain what happened here, if you haven't read it, is to read it out loud to you. So we have the main part of the article, and we're just going to read it. Okay? So listen in.
All right.
We're reading it to you. All right. Sorry, I couldn't resist. That was just too good, just to set up for that.
I've watched this video, though. Strap on in.
Okay, here we go, everybody.
So it begins here. Cricket was a wire hair pointer, about 14 months old, she says, adding that the dog, a female, had a aggressive personality and needed to be trained to be used for hunting pheasants.
She includes her story about the ill-fated Cricket, she says, to illustrate her willingness in politics as well as in South Dakota life to do anything, quote, difficult, messy, and ugly, end quote, if it simply needs to be done.
I'm concerned already.
Yeah, so, and this is quite a common, unfortunately, Americanism, is a proof of I can get the hard work done because I'm a hard worker on the farm or in the wild, or to me it doesn't strike as a one-to-one.
No, I guess not. Okay, look, I've stalled this out long enough. Let's see what we heard from Kirsty Noam.
Oh, my goodness.
And what she had to say about her willingness to do the difficult, messy, and ugly.
By taking Cricket on a pheasant hunt with older dogs, Noam says she hoped to calm the young dog down and begin to teach her how to behave.
It's just a puppy. All right, unfortunately, Cricket ruined the hunt, she said, going, quote, out of her mind with excitement, chasing all the birds and having the time of her life. Noam describes calling Cricket, then using an electronic collar to attempt to bring her under control. Nothing worked. Then, on the way home after the hunt, as Noam stopped to talk to a local family, Cricket escaped Noam's truck and attacked the family's chickens.
So, quote, grabbing one chicken at a time, crunching it to death with one bite, then dropping it to attack another. Cricket, the untrainable dog, Noam writes, behaved like a, quote, trained assassin. When Noam finally grabbed Cricket, she says the dog, quote, whipped around to bite me. Then, as the chicken's owner wept, Noam repeatedly apologized, wrote the shocked family a check, quote, for the price they asked, and help them dispose of the carcasses littering the scene of the crime.
Okay, through it all, Noam says Cricket was, quote, the picture of pure joy. I hated that dog, Noam writes, adding that Cricket had proved herself, quote, untrainable, dangerous to anyone she came in contact with, and less than worthless as a hunting dog.
So at that moment, Noam says, I realized I had to put her down. Noam, who also represented her state in Congress for 8 years, got her gun, then led Cricket to a gravel pit. It was not a pleasant job, she writes, but it had to be done. And after it was over, I realized another unpleasant job needed to be done. Incredibly, Noam's tale of slaughter is not finished.
Her family, she writes, also owned a male goat that was nasty and mean because it had not been castrated.
Naturally.
Furthermore, as one knows, the goat smelled disgusting, musky, rancid, and loved to chase Noam's children, knocking them down and ruining their clothes.
Noam decided to kill the unnamed goat the same way she had just killed Cricket the dog. But though she dragged him to a gravel pit, the goat jumped as she shot and therefore survived the wound.
Okay, I've heard enough of this person. What a nut job. But I mean, look, for all of our flaws in New Zealand, everybody, can you imagine if you had a story being put out by, well, let's say Chris Luxon, Chris Hipkins, even Winston Peters, in his most disagreeable, would not put out a story like this as a means of endorsing themselves as some kind of, what, champion of the people?
Well, and it should be noted the reason we're even talking about this is because it was one of the most trending stories here in New Zealand, but probably before just the absurdity of what has unfolded in this book, and yeah, using it as a promotion of yourself as to why you should be in a position of power.
Yeah, unbelievable, right? I mean, I have heard people say before that one of the easiest ways to decide if somebody should be disqualified from running for office is if they have a desire to run for office.
Yeah.
There's some kind of a selection bias going on here. The story, though, isn't over because, again, this was on Saturday where Kristi Noem was number 5 in the country. I've just double-checked the search terms in New Zealand today. You want to know what the number 1 search term in the country is?
Is it Kristi?
It is indeed. She's back again, and now the headline coming out of the Iowa Capital Dispatch is Kristi Noem may have brought us all together. So...
What, because we all agree it's absurd?
I think so, quite possibly. I also wonder, though, in moments like this, whether or not the USA is leaking And by what I mean by that is, of course, we have our own search terms in New Zealand, and this information is provided by Google, and there are other algorithms we can check in with. But I feel like some of this stuff might just be kind of leaking through from the US and contaminating our search results. Like, how many people really care about this person? I can't understand how they would be the #1 news story in New Zealand. I mean, most of us wouldn't even know how to spell that person's name, would we?
Well, is it an unfortunate result of... It's so absurd and it's so crazy that if you hear a fraction of this story, you want clarification and more information.
Yeah, may well be. So, nevertheless, that was a story that not only was #5 over the course of the weekend, but #1 in New Zealand right now, Kristi Noem. And let's just say, if you have the opportunity to spend time with her, don't take it.
Trending with Andrew Curtis.
We're continuing to take a look at the top-ranked news stories in the country from the last week. These are the stories that most New Zealanders were looking for more information about. And I think it provides a lot of insight as well into where Kiwis' priorities are really at. I've got to say already, one of my highlights was having a chat with Alison Shaw. She's one of our team members here. Also, part of a successful 44 years going strong marriage. And a news story on the Spin-Off website talking about modern attitudes towards relationships. And I guess I don't think the writer realized how much they were illustrating the unexpected consequences of changing our marriage norms around and how much confusion or lack of security they might provide. But that is the virtue of this show, is maybe giving you a broader context about what more Kiwis are interested in. What do we go clicking on? What are we looking for? Because it doesn't always line up with exactly what we would expect. But one of the last stories that I will leave you with before we wrap up today is perhaps not so much of a surprise and more of hopefully a sign of things to come. This was the News Talk ZB website. So ZB Plus, and connected to, of course, that up-and-coming news radio station who, one day they'll get up to our level, Josh, but nevertheless, one of the most popular news stories on their site over the last week was regarding a new player in the supermarket landscape. New supermarket brands, Josh.
Ooh, because... Okay, so this has been a debate for a long time, and it's been in the headlines for a while as well because we've got a bit of a monopoly. Do we have a new arrival? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, though the circumstances here are rather limited, and I mean, I'm hoping this is going to be a long-lasting trend, but I'm not 100% sure. The story relates to residents in Norton, Hamilton. They'll be soon walking through the doors of the biggest independent supermarket in New Zealand, FIFO.
FIFO?
FIFO stands for Fresh In, Fresh Out. Anyway, the suburb has been without a supermarket for 8 months after, get this, losing its countdown to persistent retail crime.
Okay.
So the owner, Manish Thakar, has said that the new supermarket will be financially viable in the way that the location's previous countdown could not be due to its independence and ability to be stocked by various suppliers tailoring to resident-specific needs. I would suggest to you that if the reason that the last one closed was due to crime, that might be the place that you want to start.
Yeah. And they need to do some remarketing as well because FIFO, here comes a new supermarket.
Trending with Andrew Curtis.
And so with all that said, we want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's been a part of the show with us today. And a big thank you to everybody, too, who has joined the stream today, who has watched the show as we've gone to air. Look, we'd love to know your thoughts on the show. Did you enjoy it today? And, of course, we look forward to getting you more involved as the show goes along. Josh has been keeping an eye on potential messages that have come through. So a reminder that you can always head along to the YouTube page for Rima, or if you head to the Rima website itself, rima.co.nz, you can click through on the Facebook link, and that will take you through to a spot where you can stream the show live there as well. So thank you once again for your company. We hope you enjoyed and were enlightened by these stories that were the most popular in the country over the last week. We'll see you again next Wednesday as we look at the most popular news stories in the country. These are the stories that Aotearoa has been searching for.